recording. If you're new to PISLAP and you'd like to just have us add you to our email list, please just pop your name and email address in the chat, and I'll make a note of it and add you to the list. So with that, I'll turn it over to Peter to lead us in that introductory piece.
Okay, thank you, Nanette. So let me just start by saying something about PISLAP. There are some people here today who haven't been. By the way, is the sign that's on my screen going to disappear, Nanette? Or am I the only one that sees
what sign? What do you see?
This meeting is being recorded. Oh, I have to consent to it. I see. By pressing continue. Got it.
Yeah.
So just a word or two, a few sentences about PISLAP for those of you who are new. So the project for integrating spirituality, law, and politics is a group of lawyers, law professors, law students, and fellow travelers like Yudong, who's here, who's an undergraduate student at the University of Maryland. We come from the conviction, some of us come out of politics, some out of more spiritual practices. We have the conviction that human beings long to be fully seen by one another, to embrace each other's presence, to care for one another, to connect with one another deeply. But we live within a legal culture that actually emphasizes individualism, separation, antagonism, undermining the other for the sake of your own self-interest. All that inheritance from a few hundred years ago, really, this still shapes our legal system at a moment when there needs to be a transition toward fostering empathy and compassion and human connection. So what we are doing is trying to build an organization that foregrounds that in theory and in practice. And we have monthly calls like this. We have maybe it's semi-annual conferences and gatherings when possible, and a website, write articles. The website is spiritlawpolitics.org. So welcome. I'm very glad to have you with us. And now to introduce, I will just go down the rows here. So I'm Peter Gable. I'm in San Francisco, in a little corner of my house where it's possible to get good reception. And I'll stop there. Kristen Bolt, could you introduce yourself and say maybe a little more than I said?
Sure. My name is Kristen Bolt. I am in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm a collaborative attorney, and yes, I'm here. I met Amanda through Kim Wright, and they were doing a kind of a buddy, meet another integrative law buddy. And so we had this just fabulous inspirational conversation. And it is so inspiring to me to find other people that are on this path, that are trying to do better and rebuild connection and be a positive influence. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Kristen. Marjorie Silver.
So I teach about all of this stuff and have since before I discovered PISLAP. I am physically located on the east end of Long Island, looking out at my bird feeder and the birds. And because there's so many of us and I want to get to hear Amanda and I have to leave early, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Ken Haldenstein. Hi.
Hi, it's good to be here. I'm in my backyard in White Plains, New York, Westchester County. It's great to see everyone. Thank you very much, Peter.
Maitreya Badami. Ken, good to see you.
Hi, I am in Chico, California, up in the lovely North State. I currently teach legal studies at Chico State University, an undergrad institution. I was a criminal defense attorney in a variety of settings for 23 years. If someone could mute whoever that is, that'd be helpful. In a variety of settings, the most recent of which was my last 8 years in practice was spent at the Northern California Innocence Project. And currently really excited about a project to try to launch something similar to the Georgia Justice Project to serve the North State region, which we're characterizing as a justice desert along the lines of the food deserts that you find in inner cities. We have a justice desert here where there's not really any kind of, it's just a very challenging area to be an indigent criminal defendant. So that's it for me for today. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great about the Georgia Justice Project. Yudong Zhu.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yudong. I am a junior public policy student at the University of Maryland. I'm currently in College Park, and I'm also the chair of the youth committee of PISLAP. And the youth committee is basically PISLAP trying to mobilize young people to embody the same ideal of restorative justice, of spiritually informed method to law and social change. And right now we're focusing on immigrant justice issues, working with a variety of organizations who share the same passion with us, taking a multifaceted, multidisciplinary approach, and it's going well. Peter's been helping me a lot with that.
Thank you, Yudong. Jennifer Jones, very good to see you.
Good to see all of you and good to see you, Peter. I am here in Denver. It's an unusually overcast day, so I'm just enjoying a nice day at home, and we'll get back to work.
Thank you. Bradley Roth, to you as well.
Hello, great to be on the call with you all. I am in Harlem, New York, and looking at my ring light, which has become a familiar point of reference in this Zoom world that hopefully will be emerging out of soon. I'm the chair and co-founder of Mediators Beyond Borders International New York group, and teach mediation and meditation at undergraduate level at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and an attorney and mediator.
Thank you very much, Bradley. Blanca Leon.
Hello, I'm in the UK, just outside of London. I was practicing law in-house in the corporate world, and I abandoned it at the end of January, so I'm on a wild adventure. I'm currently doing the conscious contract certification, and I'm really happy to see so many faces I recognize every month here, so thanks very much.
Great to have you. Angie Martell.
So I'm Angie Martell. I've attended a number of PISLAP events. They're always amazing. And I'm in the island of Vieques, Puerto Rico. I am a holistic lawyer who practices in New York, Massachusetts, Puerto Rico, and Michigan. I am also the founder of Colibri Institute of Social Justice.
I would like two there. I would like one in black and one in gray.
I think there's a.
Excuse me, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm going to mute everybody, and then when Angie, if you could then unmute yourself to talk. So just to.
Okay, should I repeat what I said, or I'm not sure where I go. So I'm Angie Martell. I've been on a number of PISLAP events. They're always amazing. I've been off the grid a bit because I've been busy. I practice New York, Massachusetts, Puerto Rico, and Michigan. I actually am in Vieques, Puerto Rico. I'm the founder of Colibri Institute of Social Justice. And I also have done the certification with Kim Wright on conscious contracts. And I'm so happy to be on this call. And
Can folks hear? I can't hear Angie.
Okay.
I think you muted all of us, so now we have to unmute.
Unmute ourselves, and I'm
to speak.
And I think we did hear Angie, all of us.
I think we lost the end of Angie, but hopefully she's back.
Great to see you, Angie. Elaine Quinn, hi.
Hi everyone, sorry, I'm on my phone. Great to be here. I'm Elaine Quinn. I'm based in Ireland at the moment, and I'm connected with PISLAP through the edition of The Conscious Lawyer, which we did recently. So yeah, know many people on this call, and it's lovely to see all the faces.
Thanks, Elaine. Rhiannon Thomas, unmute yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon Thomas, and I'm in Cape Town in South Africa. So close, not that close, but closer than a lot of you to Amanda. I call myself an integrated lawyer, and my sort of mission is to bring more heart into law and all the aspects of heart and what it encompasses.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Philip Daunt. Philip, we can't hear you. There's something distorted in your mic. You sound like a bit like Alvin the chipmunk. So, Philip, shall I come back to you? Because we can't pick up your voice right now.
We can't hear you.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to you at the end. Joseph Milowicz III?
Yep.
Milowicz?
Hi, it's my first meeting. I was intrigued by some of the posts that Amanda had on LinkedIn, so I figured I'd stop by.
Great.
Thank you.
Where are you?
I'm in New York.
Great, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Catherine, I can't see your last name fully, but welcome.
Yeah, it's Catherine Maminska.
Maminska, yes.
Yes. So I'm French, currently based in London, and I'm a qualified solicitor. I've already been to some of the meetings, but because of family issues, I had to leave. I have a small child, so I couldn't actually attend all of them. But I used to work in private equity, and I quit around 1 year ago. And I'm on the path of like learning more about conscious law and collaborative law. And maybe as well introducing it to French-speaking countries, because I feel that it's something, the way it's still law is practiced is very adversarial. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, I feel there's so much, I learned so much from Kim Wright's book, and I just want to spread the words like in Europe. So that's my mission. Great. That's how I feel, but I don't know if it's possible. Yeah.
Seems to be possible. Seems to be. Bonnie Silvestri.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Silvestri. I'm here in Sarasota, Florida. I've been to a number of the calls. I am so inspired by it, and I've always kind of wanted to get to hear Amanda because I love her posts, so I'm excited. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. Alyssa Johnson.
Hey folks, my name's Alyssa Johnson and I am in Austin, Texas. And I used to practice law in DC, and now I actually work with attorneys to help them create more heart-centered legal practices and lives.
Well, beautiful. Thank you. Anne and Rand, Anne Friedman, I think that you are not connected yet at this moment, so I'll come back to you.
No, I'm here.
You're there. Oh, there you are. But there's
yes, I switched from my phone to Zoom when I got home.
Okay.
And Rand isn't back on yet, but I will introduce us.
Okay.
We live in Philadelphia, and Rand is retired from Rutgers Law School, and I teach at Rutgers Law School. I'm involved in a lot of family law issues, and I'm currently teaching a course on rethinking criminal law, which is about restorative practices and spirituality and conflict as an opportunity. So today is perfect.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Great. Thank you, Anne. Who is 360-670-7178? Because I only see your phone number. So I'll come back to you. Flavia Jimenez?
Yep. Hi, everybody. This is my first call.
Welcome.
Colleague Edward Hales at Advancement Project forwarded me the invite. So happy to be here and learn a little bit more about you. I'm a recovering civil rights attorney and most recently became a coach. So incorporating all of my past nonprofit experience into my coaching practice and organizational development.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Flavia. Stu Webb. Unmute yourself, please. I'll come back to you. Peter Shaw.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening. I'm in Chicago, and I am a practicing attorney, a partner at a small law firm, working primarily on state and local government issues, and it's a minority-owned firm. I practiced in DC also, I think as one of the other women said, for over a decade in international development at the World Bank and the US government. So, and I'm also a certified yoga and meditation teacher. So I'm trying to, kind of figure out what's next in my career path, and integrating this concept of lawyer as a peacemaker is very attractive to me. I've studied a lot of Gandhi's work, and worked in India before. So it's great to be around like-minded people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Great to have you. Philip, why don't we try once more?
Does that sound better?
Yes.
Oh,
You're
good.
here. You're here.
I left and came back. Thanks. Appreciate Peter for doing that. So I would like to be heard when I talk. But, okay. Once again, I live in Monterey, California. I've been practicing law for over 40 years. I've been a mediator for 28. I became a mediator as a result of frustration of the litigation process. For a while, I thought I was going to quit practicing law and become a life coach. And then I had an epiphany that why throw the baby out with the bathwater? Why not merge the two skills together? So I call what I do a coach approach to the practice of law. I've taught law at the local law school for a couple of years, and I met Kim Wright in 2006, the IHL annual conference in Pacific Grove, California, presented there in 2006, 2007, and 2008. My current iteration is I consider myself to be a conscious conflict engagement coach. And my purpose in life at this point in time is to teach other lawyers to do what I do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Donna. Donna of no last name. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. I'm in Los Angeles. I've been practicing for 30 years. For those of you who remember Renaissance Law, I was one of the founding members, and later was a president of Renaissance Lawyer for a while. So I've known Kim for a long time, probably since about 2000, I think. And have been very interested in integrative approaches to law.
Welcome, welcome. Good to see you or hear you. Rand Rosenblatt, hi.
Thank you.
Are you unmuting yourself, Rand?
I'm a retired con law professor living in Philadelphia, and I'm married to Ann Friedman, who's already introduced herself, I think.
Great, Rand. Good to see you. An old comrade of mine from 40 plus years ago in critical legal studies. Stu Webb, we didn't hear from you. Can you unmute yourself and leap back in? If not, maybe we'll hear from you later. And is there anyone else who has not introduced him or herself?
Hi, I haven't introduced myself yet.
Okay, please do.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Robin. I'm in Oakland, California.
Hi, Robin.
I used to work in New York doing like aviation finance and securities law, then quit to travel for a few years, and now I'm in e-discovery.
Thank you. Great. And that's Perry Stedman, I think, the 202 guy.
That's me. I am currently in South Beach, Florida, on Lincoln Road, watching the palm trees sway in the sunshine. Originally from Washington, D.C., where I practiced design law for 30, 40 years. I am what you might call an original member of PISLAP going back to the mid-90s. And I am currently a membership director, you might say. So I would encourage any of you who have not officially joined PISLAP to go to our website, spiritlawpolitics.org, and join up. We have a very flexible due schedule and a number of very good benefits. Great to be here.
Thanks, Perry. Thank you. And Maureen Kane, I don't see you on my screen, but Nanette says you're here.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not really ready for prime time here. But yeah, I just came across Amanda's post on LinkedIn and I thought, oh, I think I'm actually in time for this. So I thought I would check it out. I'm a retired lawyer in Chandler, Arizona, near Phoenix, and just kind of interested. I'm a writing coach, and golly, I do all kinds of volunteer stuff. I'm probably busier now than I was when I was actually teaching at Phoenix School of Law before it went under. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to watch, and I'll go back and mute myself.
Thank you, Maureen. And there's one other person, Nanette, that
yes, Mel Birdsong.
Yeah, hi, I was the 360 number, but I couldn't unmute. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm calling in from a very sunny day on Bainbridge Island in Washington State, and I am currently an attorney practicing healthcare and public health law.
Thank you. Thank you, Mel. Well, you know, it is really wonderful to see all of the radiant faces and radiant words from so many different parts of the world on the call. And it's encouraging to know that we're all out here and connected, even though we're not always in each other's presence. So it was lovely to hear that and confidence building. Nanette, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much for leading that, Peter. That was great. So welcome again, everyone. Just a word about myself. I'm Nanette Shore. I live in New York City. I work for Bronx Legal Services, which is like people are more familiar with legal aid. It's an organization that represents low-income people. Our mission is to fight poverty and address racial, social, and economic justice. And I'm also on the executive committee of PISLAP. So I wanted to move into introducing Amanda. We may ask folks to stay a little bit late because our introductions took a bit longer than anticipated. Well worth it, but we don't want to cut Amanda short. So just a word or two about Amanda. Amanda describes herself as a legal futurist, a lawyer coach, and a channel. She runs Awakening Lawyers to help lawyers who love the law but are disillusioned or disheartened by the actual practice to reimagine and redesign their lives so that they can practice, that we can practice in our own way, in our own time, and on our own terms. She sees this work as a sacred responsibility and the power and opportunity to change the world that comes with a law degree. So Amanda joins us from South Africa, from Cape Town. She's done a lot of wonderful work, and I won't go through all of it because I want to just turn it over to Amanda and thank her for leading us on this call.
Thank you so much, Nanette. And I feel delighted that we did have a chance to introduce ourselves, because I just have such an enormous sense of the richness of the people that are in this gathering. And I want to say thank you, because I'm aware that attention is today's biggest commodity. And so the fact that you have chosen to spend some of this time on this call and listening to me, it is a privilege. I wanted to ask if we could start with just 1 minute of meditation to focus our minds and let go of whatever distractions you've had going on prior to getting here. And I ask you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that, because sometimes it helps just to have less visual distractions, to really go inward. And what I compare meditation to, for many people who are not familiar with it, is it's simply the closing down of all the tabs that you have open. So one by one, as you just deepen your breathing and come into your own body, if you imagine that you're actually closing down those tabs that we need to do from time to time to make our computers work and to make ourselves work. So the concerns you had about what you were working on prior to this, these days with our laptops, there's always a million other things going on. Our phones are probably beside us right now. There's dinner to think of, children to put to bed, clients that need returning to. But I ask that in this short time we have together, that we focus our attention here. It not only assists me in terms of my ability to speak and present when you are present, but it assists all of us when our energy is fully present and with each other. And I'd like to ask that we set a group intention, that may we have our understanding of conflict transformed in a small or large way today, and perhaps just from being connected energetically to all the people on this call who share a similar vision for changing the world in this way. So we set an intention that we be channels bringing peace to our families, to our neighborhoods, to our workplaces, to our countries, and to the world. So when you feel centered and ready, please open your eyes. And I'm going to share my screen with you. And Nanette, you can just let me know if, wait, hold on, let's play from the current slide. Right, is that all good? You also may want to know that you can move me. I generally try and put the speaker when I'm listening, I put myself in the bottom right-hand corner. So those of you, if you want to do that, I kind of try to leave space on the slide so that my face or whoever's faces you have are not all over the slides. So I want to start by saying that I believe we're in the midst of a massive awakening of the planet. And I also think it can't happen fast enough because the damage that we are doing to the earth physically may determine its collapse before we're able to bring about the changes necessary to ensure its survival. I'll admit that I'm feeling a little bit more pessimistic than usual, having recently watched the film Seaspiracy on Netflix, which is about the destruction of our oceans, but I still highly recommend watching it. I think it's our duty as conscious beings to face the collapse head on, although to be honest, I really believe this takes courage. On Saturday evening, I was at a party, and that, I have to admit, felt surreal in itself because, you know, who goes to parties these days? But there I was in a party. I'm now getting the messages about who may have tested positive for COVID since the party, so maybe it wasn't such a good idea. But there was this moment when I looked at the dance floor and all of these people, you know, with drinks in their hands and laughing. And I said to my husband, I sometimes feel like we're on the Titanic. It's like everyone is having a good time, but ignoring the fact that the ship is sinking. He immediately got what I was talking about, which is why I married him. And he made sure that I took my antidepressants the next day. I do believe, if I'm honest, that in many ways we are doomed. But I also think that we are here now for a reason, and that we need to do the best we can to fix things, even if that may only be that we're learning how to do things better for when we incarnate on another planet in the future. I'm being educated at the moment to talk about the collapse of civilization as we know it, rather than climate change. And I think that's interesting because climate change actually sounds like an academic term, and it also sounds like it's something to do with the weather, but that's not what we're talking about with climate change. What we're actually talking about is it's the collapse of civilization as we know it, and we need to call it that. There is going to be increasing conflict as we compete for ever scarcer resources. And so the destruction of the planet and how we manage conflict, I believe, are inextricably interlinked. The piece of the world that I've come here to fix is the legal system, or try to fix, should I say. And it's a system that we have created because it's about how humans get along with each other. But to me, and I think to many other people who are on this call this evening, it seems to us like the system, we've forgotten what the system is for, the point of it all. So while the world is experiencing a massive awakening, I just fear it's not happening fast enough in the law. And I think that could be because the legal system is based on precedent and certainty and clarity and avoiding error, getting things right. And all of those things need to be set aside when we are engaged in creating new systems, because it is a creative endeavor and we have to risk being wrong in order to create. It's not possible to create if you're not prepared to risk getting things wrong. But that is terrifying for legal professionals because it goes against everything that we have built our careers and our lives and our identities on. If I switch to a parallel industry for a second, in Western medicine, we've been treating symptoms for thousands of years. We are now only waking up to the mind-body connection, which has been in many other types of medicine. That's why I refer specifically here to the Western medicine. So we're waking up to this mind-body connection, and it's no longer weird or seen as kind of a fringe thing to get acupuncture to unblock your chi. And there are books that are being written and shared widely about people curing themselves of cancer by figuring out what the pre-physical cause of the cancer was, what the disease was trying to tell them. And if you haven't read Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me, I highly recommend it. So quantum physicists are showing us that things manifest at the level of mind before they can manifest in physical form. This understanding needs to change everything about how we treat illness. Yet the wheels of change are turning slowly. And when will cutting edge thinking trickle down slowly and fast enough through the system to actually bring about real change? Now, I'm very fascinated by the parallels between integrative medicine and integrative law. And this is just one way of showing how very similar the developments taking place in both fields are. On the left, we've got the integrative medicine wheel, and on the right, just one view of how to look at a legal problem from a variety of different aspects: the financial, the emotional, the physical, the legal, and the spiritual, which may be hidden behind my face. So the awakening is so similar that one of the things that I've done is take a paragraph from a book which is about integrative medicine, or functional medicine as they often call it. And what I did here is I replaced the words law and lawyer and doctor and client and medicine and law. And this is how it reads. Integrative law addresses the underlying causes of conflict using a systems-oriented approach and engaging both client and lawyer in a therapeutic partnership. It is an evolution in the practice of law that better addresses the societal needs of the 21st century. Integrative law addresses the whole person, not just an isolated set of problems. So that, as I say, was taken from a journal about medicine, but you see, if you switch the words around, we are doing exactly the same thing in law. The issue we need to look at is that a conflict is never about the facts. It is about the story that we have made up about the facts. So the actual conflict is just the symptoms. And we need to learn that treating the symptoms may make the patient or client feel better for a bit, like when you take a Panado for a headache, but it doesn't make the problem go away. So every time a court case is held, and 99% of the case is about the facts, blame is then apportioned and money is paid or someone is sent to jail, we're treating the symptoms. The problem itself hasn't gone away. And you can discover this simply by asking the participants in cases how they are left feeling. And the interesting thing is all those studies that show that the winners of court cases are often as dissatisfied as the losers of court cases. So we know we are doing something wrong. One of the major criticisms of the truth and reconciliation process in South Africa is that it focused on truth at the cost of reconciliation. So again, there was this focus on the facts and what had happened, rather than putting enough emphasis on the reconciliation, which is what people were mostly looking for. But enormous good has come of it, including a much deeper understanding of what reconciliation means. And I think it's fascinating, if you want to delve further into this, and this is up your alley, to look at the different types of reconciliation, because as a result of what happened in the TRC and various other similar processes, scholars have been writing about individual reconciliation, interpersonal reconciliation with the other. So there's the making sense of things for ourselves, individual, interpersonal with the perpetrator of the violence, with other parties to that conflict, socio-political reconciliation, which of course was so important in this country, and then institutional reconciliation in terms of our attitude and regard for those institutions charged with protecting us. And if you look, you know, what's happening in America at the moment and the feelings about the police, that's where we're talking about institutional reconciliation. So there are everything that we experience in our lives is processed through a massive filter. So when I want to explain how conflict is not about the facts, it's the stories that we've made up about the facts, I turn to this slide. Because everything in our lives is processed through a filter, which is made up of our beliefs. And our beliefs are really actually just like a jumbled selection of neural pathways which have been formed from our upbringing. So all of our past experiences, largely formed by our parents or whoever it was who raised us, and of course our cultural context. So we think that we see the world or what is happening as it is, but we don't. We see the world as we are. We experience things through this filter all the time. There are these three different aspects of consciousness which are giving our subconscious messages. So there's the unconscious, which in terms of the language I'm using now, this is all the limiting self belief systems, which we hold just below our waking self-awareness. And this is what we've acquired through all the sum of our experiences, our lives. And it's not what we call the ego, but the ego is driven by its content. Then we've got the level of the self-conscious, and that's this waking, aware part of us. It's the part of us that notices and thinks and analyzes and chooses. So this waking self, the self-conscious. And then we also have the superconscious. And the superconscious is known by many names. So some people call this the one mind, or our intuition, or our higher self, or the soul self, or the God within, depending on your belief system. But there's this extraordinary part of us that can tap into something greater. That part of us that knows when someone is going to call and then they do. That part of us that experiences and brings about the synchronicities in our lives when we think, how was that even possible? So there are all these three things which are feeding into the subconscious. And what is important is the part that we say yes to, what we are feeding, that's the part that then becomes our reality. So it totally depends on where we put our focus, which of these parts that is constantly feeding in a constant stream, which is why we meditate, so that we can try and hear the superconscious part of ourselves. It just depends what we focus on, then becomes our reality. We are constantly in internal conflict. Our subconscious isn't receiving one message at a time in a linear sequence. It's simultaneously subject to a variety of conflicting messages. And in order to know which message to engage, it looks at which message has the power, which message is being given the most energy, and it then creates that one. So what happens when clients have a conflict and approach a lawyer? There's this process in which the lawyer is helping the client decide what to give the most energy to, and that is what is then created. So this idea that conflict is here to teach us isn't something new. Every major religious text and path, from the Bhagavad Gita to the Quran to the Bible, they all talk in one way or another about how we are here to learn through conflict. And spiritual leaders everywhere, all genuine ones, and I say spiritual leaders to differentiate here from religious leaders and from pseudo-spiritual leaders, because I have to say that when I get on Instagram these days, it seems like everybody is claiming to be a spiritual leader. Every coach on Instagram is now a spiritual leader, and I'm not sure if I should be getting on that bandwagon or not to get clients, but I digress. So this is not a new idea that conflict is here to teach us something. But when we are facilitating a conflict, as lawyers, as mediators, we need to be aware of all of these various parts of people and what is feeding the narrative. What are the lenses through which this person is seeing the conflict? Because there's always going to be a hurt and angry part. And then there's this super conscious part, which if we can tap into it, is the part of us that's actually open to transformation. I'm fascinated by past lives. And I've read many books about the subject, and so many of them talk about major conflicts in people's lives and losses and tragedies that people go through in their lives. And sometimes what happens is that a person, most of the time I'd say, they're able to make sense of what happened in that life when that life is over. And that's why increasingly people are interested in this past life regression therapy. So when we get to the end of our life, we are able to see why things happened from a soul perspective. In past life regression therapy, I think it's nothing short of mind-blowing, the realizations that people start to have about why certain things have happened to them. But there are also people who are able to make sense of major conflict and losses and tragedies within their own lifetimes. And that's where the lawyers come in. So I don't know if you know the story of Amy Beale, but she was an American graduate from Stanford University, and she was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa. She was murdered by Cape Town residents when there was a sort of mob attack, and she was in a car. They were shouting anti-white slurs, and in this process, she was murdered. The 4 men who were convicted of her murder were pardoned by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. In 1994, Amy Beale's parents, Linda and Peter, founded the Amy Beale Foundation Trust to develop and empower youth in the townships with the main aim of discouraging further violence. And 2 of the men who had been convicted of her murder started working for the foundation as part of its programs. It is the most extraordinary story of reconciliation within this lifetime of parents who came to death with the murder of their child and why it happened and what the bigger purpose of it might be and how they could use their pain and suffering to transform hundreds of lives. So I want to turn to a more personal story about what I've learned through conflict. About 2 years ago, I did a meditation series by Deepak Chopra, and it was actually about manifesting abundance in your life. But there was one exercise in there. Every day you had to do a different exercise, and you had to write down all the people who you had any sort of grudge against or who had harmed you. So I sat down to do this exercise, and I was, surprised that actually there weren't many people who came to mind. I felt like, okay, I don't really have many major grudges when I look back amongst my life. You could include institutions, whatever. But luckily, I didn't read the next part of the exercise because the next part required me to bless each person and thank them for the role they played in my life. But I hadn't read on it. I was scrolling on my phone. So I just read the first part and thought, okay. And I decided one of the people to put down on this list of people who'd harmed me was the man who raped me in 2002. So in this situation, I'd been drugged first by this guy that I gave a lift home to. We were out partying, we were going to go to another party, and he asked to stop at his house first to get some things before we went on, and offered me a drink. And long story short, he put something in the drink, and I woke up the next morning in his bed, naked, while he pretended that it had been a date and asked for my number. And all I knew was I needed to play it cool and get the hell out of there, but not show any fear. So I've had a lot of therapy since then. And honestly, I can say that I've made peace with what happened. I certainly wasn't at the time, but over many years, I have managed to make sense of it. But what happened during this particular exercise was extraordinary. And that's what I want to share with you. Because in this process of needing to now bless him and thank him for the lessons he brought into my life, I asked for, divine assistance to be shown some other perspective on why this may have happened. And suddenly it came to me that at this time of my life, I had been in the depths of cocaine and alcohol addiction. I had ended up getting clean about a year after this incident. But what was happening is that I was drugging myself unconscious all the time. At that stage, I'd often drink to the point of blackout, etc. So I was drugging myself unconscious all the time and abusing myself, but unable in the midst of addiction to see what I was doing to myself. So what I created unconsciously was someone doing those things to me, because it was only in that way that I could see it as a harm and a violence that was being perpetrated against me. I was completely unable to see that that is what I was doing to myself. So I have been more or less at peace with what happened for many years, and I don't carry any scar around this. But this deeper level of insight that I got 2 years ago, I have to say that it blew me away. Knowing that at an unconscious level, at a soul level, I created this experience as part of my life's learnings, and that this person was merely a role player in the drama, I feel completely liberated. I've been reading a book by Byron Katie called Loving What Is, which I highly recommend because it gives a very similar view to the fact that it is always the story that causes our suffering. And if we can understand the story we are telling ourselves, we can relieve ourselves of the suffering. And in one particular instance, she talks to someone who was repeatedly sexually abused by a stepfather. And when she goes through this process, the one question that has stayed with me is she says, if you could come back in another lifetime and play your role, having suffered such terrible abuse at the hands of this man, or play your stepfather's role, whose would you choose? And she said, I would choose mine. And in that moment, something shifted. An entire awareness of his pain and suffering and the darkness that he was encased in, that he was living out into the world. If she came back, she'd rather not have to play his role. And just that small chink of light enables us to shift our perspective in a completely new and transformative way of seeing the whole situation played out for her. My particular story, and that one didn't involve lawyers. In my case, I didn't create a criminal case because of the difficulty I thought in establishing what had happened. And to be honest, I still believe that it was largely my fault at the time because of my drug problem. But I will share with you that I wrote my final year law paper on the prosecution of drug rape. And I broke down many times in that law library reading about others' ordeals and the terribly low conviction rates, because the victim can't recall what happened when they are drugged and then raped. But sitting in that law library and weeping as I wrote that final paper, that was part of my healing. So one of the things that I've thought about in the last, I'd say 6 months or so, as I deepen my understanding of conflict, is that this insight that I had about my own sexual assault, I wasn't able to have that at the time. So it doesn't actually matter how advanced the consciousness level of the lawyer was if I had decided to go that route. I can see that in terms of my personal consciousness level, I wasn't ready to take that higher perspective until now. I simply didn't have the level of consciousness that would have enabled me to hold what I'm now able to hold. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes I think a significant period of time needs to elapse before we're able to see the bigger picture, which means, as I've said, that it doesn't matter how conscious the lawyer is, the lessons may not be ready, the student may not be ready to see those lessons yet. So if we just go back to the slide for a moment about which message is being given the most energy, I believe that it's a lawyer's role to assist clients in what they need to be focusing on. Lawyers can focus their clients on getting even, or they can focus their clients on transformation. And there are lawyers who are doing this extraordinary work. And I think we need more of these awakening lawyers, which is what I call them. So these are lawyers who are making the shift from fighter to peacemaker, to becoming justice warriors and activists for social change. Professor Thomas Barton is a lawyer. I've forgotten which university he's at now. He's written a book called Preventive Law, and he talks about lawyers as fighters operating on a vertical plane and in rewind mode, so up, down, and backward. They do not look sideways at ground level to the people who experience legal problems or to the social, financial, and organizational environments in which those people live. Fighters also do not often look ahead to imagine the consequences of problems, of solving problems through adversarial procedures or toward interventions that could prevent a recurrence of the problem. So the current legal model doesn't require us to look much further ahead down the line. All conflict occurs in the shadow of the future. This is a quote I came across today, and I thought, I love it. So I really have to stick this in because I think it's beautiful. In short, it's saying that in conflict, it is easy to focus on short-term goals and to forget about the long-term consequences. A lawyer needs to help a client to think about the future you. What does future you want? Not the you now who is in the ego and is hurt. And I first really came across this work beautifully when I discovered collaborative divorce work. And in the book of, I think, Pauline Tesla's book, Kim Wright also trains in collaborative divorce. Kim spoke about asking the clients, what do you imagine 20 years from now? Knowing, that you're going through this divorce, but, your daughter who's now, 3, maybe getting married, what do you envisage at her wedding? That you are able to have the first dance with your now ex-husband, or, that you can't even be at the wedding together. And helping people to move into that future. And I was deeply moved by that then. And so I feel like we need to all put this on our wall, that conflict occurs in the shadow of the future. How do we help our clients see way down the line when they are so much in their emotional pain body of now that they can't see that? I believe that that's our duty. So we need lawyers who are able to do this, and there are lawyers who are doing it. I speak to amazing, life-changing lawyers every week, but most of them are solopreneurs, and they have like a handful of clients, and I feel they aren't getting the exposure that their brilliant work actually needs. One lawyer I know recently mediated an online rape case where the rapist was known by the survivor and agreed amazingly to be part of this process. She had sessions with both individually first, and then she mediated the process with them together. So as I said, it was online. This was not a criminal proceeding by any means. but she was able to get the rapist to fulfill all the woman's requests regarding healing. And I regard that as extraordinary and absolutely groundbreaking. I think it's the first case of its kind done in this way. I don't know, but I think she should be the next PISLAP speaker or sometime later in the year. I want to celebrate this sort of groundbreaking work and encourage lawyers to do things differently. Another lawyer that I spoke to in the last 6 months holds restorative justice processes between victims of violent crime and the perpetrators. Now, in my other guise and journey of having moved from being a lawyer to a lawyer coach and to being a channel, I did a reading for a lawyer in which her spirit guides explained the karmic significance of her work. Because by holding these dialogues between the victims of crime or the families and the perpetrators, she is allowing people to resolve massive karmic issues actually within this lifetime, which could take 3 or 4 lifetimes to work through. So from my spiritual understanding, sometimes a person may have to come back and be on the receiving end of violence in order to understand the significance of their actions in another life. And what this lawyer is doing is helping people do that within one lifetime. It really is, to me, nothing short of miraculous. So yes, I'm also a channel. I can contact people's spiritual guides and receive messages about their lives. And once upon a time, as a lawyer, I thought that was completely nuts. I was firmly situated in the logical, rational world, and thought people who spoke about such things were really quite crazy. But I believe that change is possible, that we can change and grow and open our minds to ways of viewing things that before did seem crazy to us. So I get told all sorts of things about people's lives that really help them. And to me, that is miraculous. I've mostly chosen to use this gift to help lawyers to heal the legal profession by gaining a deeper understanding of what it is they're here to do and what is standing in their way. And it's interesting, I only felt ready to embrace this gift with lawyers about a year ago during the lockdown period and these massive changes happening in the world, because I was afraid before then to tell lawyers that I'm a channel or medium, because I thought, they'd laugh me out of the room. How would they take that seriously? And the fact that I now have lawyers approaching me for readings is beautiful. And I believe that all of us, as on our journey to being awakening lawyers, need to claim all the parts of ourselves. I've heard people mentioning all the different work they've done, like being a yoga instructor and knowing about mind-body connection and how to feel things and anchor things. And we need to bring all of who we are to what we do and not cut off parts of ourselves, which is currently what the legal system demands of us. So I just need to know why it's beeping there. So what if there is a better way? What if we aren't all separate and at odds with each other? What if the correction system with its focus on retribution is ultimately dehumanizing and damaging to all of us? Maybe we're always going to have problems and disputes and accidents and crimes, but is there a better way to address these problems than suiting up in armor and hacking away at each other, symbolically or otherwise? But how do we get from here to there? This is a wonderful extract from Lawyers as Peacemakers, and the author of that particular paragraph is Sheila Boyce. So how do we get from here to there? There are 4 things that I have in mind at the moment. The one is that awakening lawyers, who are the 1%, they need to lead the way. Unfortunately, lawyers who are awakening tend to quit the system. And I think Philip spoke to that, Philip Daunt, who's on this call, about how he initially left the law to become a coach. And there are a lot of lawyers who are leaving to become coaches. And my sense is somehow we have to keep those awakening lawyers within the law doing some of the legal work, although our work may also be training other lawyers. We need to work in interdisciplinary teams, the way PISLAP is trying to show us, and unite spiritual principles with the law, because law is a spiritual discipline. It's about the systems that we use to manage how 8 billion people living on one small planet are going to manage things. And I'm curious, how did that become a business? In the same way that politics has become a business. It's about branding, and it's about marketing, and it's about winning market share and money. We need to take an integral approach so that we're working on different parts of the problem simultaneously from different angles, and we have to educate law students differently. So this is just to say again that too many awakening lawyers are leaving the law because they don't know how to be themselves once they have changed and shifted. And quite often that happens through a personal crisis. They awaken, they change, they start to see things differently. They become in touch with how to bring their heart as well as their head to what they do. And suddenly they feel alienated within the legal profession and alienated from their colleagues. And the other issue is that once you start taking off your armor as a lawyer, that professional mask that you've worn for so many years, you become vulnerable. So we need to support lawyers in that process. And that's what I'm trying to do through Awakening Lawyers. The system is not designed by awakening lawyers or for them. They challenge the status quo and they don't play by the same rules because they don't value the same things. So you can't dangle the same carrot or use the same stick. For those who are interested, I do work around levels of consciousness with lawyers. This is a map by David Hawkins. It's called the Map of Consciousness. They get very bolshy around using it. So probably even for showing it here tonight, I could well find myself subject to a lawsuit. But that's a story. They've reached out to me. So there's a story that I need to share in another meeting. But what we're looking for here, if you look at that pale blue line around 400, this is where the maximum ability of lawyers has got to. It's about reason, understanding. And the only way we are going to transcend the legal system to transform and go to that next level is to cross into the next level of consciousness, which takes us into the 500s. And that is, as Rhiannon was talking about, bringing love back to the law. And that's why at this time, you'll see so many lawyers actually starting to use that term of bringing love back to the law. So love is not used here in a soppy or sentimental way, which is, I think, what many lawyers think of when they hear us talking about bringing love to the law. You know, in big law firms, that's just seen as, you know, what on earth are people talking about? But what we're talking about is that as your consciousness grows, you start to realize there's this unseen divine power that is underlying and kind of running the world. And underneath that power is the power of love. So when someone starts awakening or becoming aware of things previously that were outside of their awareness, specifically when they transcend that 400 level of consciousness, that's when miracles and transformations start to happen. So this is just a map of integral theory by Ken Wilber. If you're not familiar with integral theory, I believe we have to start working with integral theory. It goes very deep, but also the basic understanding. If students are taught that you can look at a legal problem from interior, what's going on inside the individual, to the exterior, that is what happened. So what played out in reality, the physical manifestation, what we see, what we heard, what the witnesses are reporting. Then there's the interior collective, our culture, our joint feelings, ideas, and beliefs about something. That would be the culture. And then finally, the exterior, which is our collective behavior or manifestation. And that's where we look at all the systems. So the exterior collective is all the systems, including the legal system that we've set up. It's just a framework that you can use to get a deeper understanding of things. And in terms of changing the legal system, when we look at the upper left quadrant, so interior would involve new ways of perceiving myself as a lawyer. I think I'm going to share this slide with you if you're interested in going into it in more detail, because I feel like integral theory applied to law really is a talk on its own. So you'll just see that we've got the various models of dealing with legal problems, like mediation or collaborative divorce is on that side. And then we've got the need to change the culture on the lower left-hand side. So the changes that we need to see are taking place in all four quadrants, and we need to be aware of that. I'm no longer content with the seen world. I want to know what is going on underneath. And when we're resolving conflict, we need to turn to what's going on underneath and remember that what's going on top, those are just the symptoms. We need these lawyers who have a higher level of consciousness than the parties to the conflict, because they can hold a vision that the parties cannot yet see. And here's the interesting part. They can do this even by saying nothing at all. Simply by being present, a lawyer that is at a higher level of consciousness can help a client to see things differently, because our bodies have energetic fields that are affecting each other all the time. Stuart Webb, I hope, is still on this call. So Stu Webb has taught something, I don't know, he'd have to tell us, but like 20,000 lawyers in how to practice collaborative law. The US lawyer population is estimated at about 1.3 million. So 1% would be 13,000. I think Stu Webb may have trained more than 1%. And 1% is a tipping point. So we can do this. We need to train lawyers to see things differently. Massive shifts, I believe, are possible. Clients need to know that there are amazing lawyers out there. We need to share about them on our social media pages. We need to write about them on our blogs and talk about them at dinner parties and not just to each other in forums like PISLAP. We need to get the message out there. And then importantly, that last point is that law students need to know that there are different ways to practice law. I am launching the Awakening Lawyers Student Mentorship Program with 25 law students from South Africa. Last year during lockdown, I ran a program on behalf of 2 universities. And because lockdown suddenly happened, I was allowed to create a leadership program for them online, which I immediately co-opted for my own purposes and started teaching them about integrative law. The students' reaction was extraordinary. I have hundreds of testimonials from these students of saying, why have I not been taught any of this at university? I want to know about mental health courts. I want to know about collaborative divorce. I want to know about these different forms of mediation. I want to know about everything you're talking about and about how I can be me and still be a lawyer and bring all of who I am to the law. And then, of course, that well-being aspect of managing our emotions and who we are in anxiety. So it was a resounding yes from the students, but all of the faculties, this wasn't a faculty program, it was run through a nonprofit, but all of the faculties are still, I hate to say this, in the dark ages, the ones that I've been talking to. So I'm delighted that there are people on this call who are bringing that work into universities. I want to increase that. I want universities everywhere to have options for these students. So I'm looking now for 25 mentors who are awakening lawyers who will sponsor these 25 students to participate in a 3-month course on being an awakening lawyer. And then you also have the chance to mentor that student personally in 3 or 4 conversations and to support them during the 3 months. And the sponsorship cost for each student is just $150 per month, which is probably about 1 billable hour, depending on your rate. 1 billable hour per month to make up $450 for the 3-month program. I don't know which piece of this will have landed with you. I don't know what you may have, the conflicts or losses or tragedies you may have gone through in your own life. I don't know if you are open to the thought of past lives and the bigger reasons why we may be here and why terrible things may happen to us. But I hope that in some way what I've shared has brought a little bit of light, even if it's just by being here together in this beautifully connected space. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Amanda. That was a beautiful and moving talk. Much appreciated. Friends, I know we've gone a bit past our usual stop time, but I'd like to ask if we could stay 10 more minutes and just share some responses or questions or reflections, either speaking up or putting it in the chat. So maybe we can just share a little bit with Amanda and then move ahead. So Maitreya, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you so much. You spoke to me at several different levels. Unsurprisingly, probably to you, many very particular pieces that are seemingly unrelated in that presentation are all directly things that I've been reading, thinking about, working on, reflecting in my own personal life, and am anticipating bringing into my law teaching and the practice that I'm helping to put together in criminal justice. And just thank you for that. I will be in touch. I assume we're going to have your contact info with regard to the Awakening Lawyers program. Thank you so much.
Angie?
Thank you.
So I hope you can hear me because we have a 2-second delay in Puerto Rico. I'm a shaman practitioner. So for me, the energetics in the courts, and I practice in the courtroom, is really important. One of the issues that's really important for me is not only transformation, but transmutation. So can you address how do we reach transmutation when we still have these old historical structures that in itself need transmutation and the generational trauma that these structures have caused? I know it's a heavy duty thing, but if any insight would be helpful.
Just change your mind, Angie. That's all. You know,
I don't think so, Stuart.
move out of yourself, move into the bigger self. That's all you have to do. And don't get caught up in the culture.
I think
Love
on
it.
one level, I'd agree that we can only be the change we want to see. And it sometimes feels like the problem is so massive and insurmountable. But on a recent PISLAP call, sometime earlier this year, I think it was, Nicole Copping-Pavas shared about her Buddhist background and this principle of doing no harm. And so she was aware that in cross-examining a father of a child, she was going to probably do harm. And she shared that with the courtroom beforehand, she shared about this principle of doing no harm and said, I'm aware I may do harm in this process, and I need to know that you are okay with me proceeding with this. And the father, actually, the courtroom, the energy completely shifted in the room, and the father gave her permission. And I was really touched by that story of how one person brought about this extraordinary difference in the courtroom.
Oh, sorry, Kirsten?
Yeah. I like someone earlier, there were a lot of things that hit. What really hit though was this on the education level of kind of rehumanizing the law. And I'm teaching an introductory collaborative law class. And I have one young man on there who's recently graduated from law school and wanted to start. Right. But he was looking, some of the mentality was, well, but you have to do it the wrong way first. Like you have to do it the old way before you really appreciate it. Which I think is kind of a nutty, it's kind of like saying to a young surgeon, we have these great lasers, we need you to use this hacksaw first so you know how really great the lasers are. And I'm curious how, if anyone has advice on how we start getting into law schools to open them up to that shift, because they like teaching what they know, and the insurance companies like them teaching what they know. And it's a thick wall you've got to kind of break through. But there's so much good if we can. I think there's hungry for it. I think the students would move this along much faster.
So I just wanted to say, maybe you could write down the question that you have in terms of something that you want to discuss because of the timing. Write down the question and let's create either a PISLAP call, or I'm happy to do that through my platform of Awakening Lawyers, but opportunities for us to dive deeper into the things that affect us particularly, whether it's courtroom and what happens there, which is probably not my terrain, whether it's legal education. So let's do that. Let's keep having conversations.
I think we have a few more people that wanted to share briefly. Is it Donna who's next? So Donna, Yudong, and then Alpita. I think that's our order here. Kristen, did you? Oh, sorry, you went already, right? Yeah.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to share a couple things. One of them, I'm a litigator, and so, but I'm also trained in energetic healing. So I've learned that when there's conflict with the opposing counsel, or when things really feel stuck, one of the first things I do is I go inside and I kind of apply this approach of looking at what needs to shift within me. And so I look for what is the resonance between the current conflict that's happening that doesn't seem to be moving with an internal conflict that I may have that I'm not aware of. And that's not always easy to do. Sometimes, so I use different approaches to deal with that. That's kind of when I do approach things that way. I also wanted to share a story about how I use energetic approaches, which I don't use all the time, but when I remember to, they can be very effective. I had a deposition that was in a sexual harassment case. I was representing the plaintiff, and the opposing counsel was from a big firm and really was being quite, aggressive, and my client as a result was having a really difficult time remembering and responding to questions. I mean, we had prepared for the deposition, so I knew what what her experience was and what the answers. I knew about details, and she wouldn't remember them, or she wouldn't remember properly. And this was an extended deposition. So after the first day, we would talk during the breaks, and things were not, it just wasn't going very well. So that evening, I was trying to figure out, okay, how does this get better? And I remembered from my healing school, that we were taught that you extend your heart energy. And then we were taught, because we were looking for what the problems were, you look for the energy of the problem. And it just occurred to me, what if I use that approach and I extend my heart and I intuitively look for the compassion in the field of opposing counsel. Now, at that point, I had absolutely no evidence that he had any compassion whatsoever. But I had to trust that somewhere within his energetic field, there was compassion. And so we went in the next day to the deposition. I, first of all, tried to extend my heart energy out to encompass my client so that she felt safer within the deposition. And then I used that approach, and it was like night and day. And it sounds silly. It sounds like, how could that make that much of a difference? But it kind of relates to the idea of the story. It's like, what story are we going into a situation with? Because before that, my story about this opposing counsel was that he was a big firm counsel, and this is the way things are going to go. And I've just noticed that when we can expand the story about who the others are, so that it can open up possibilities, it can help that possibility come to fruition. So thank you. I see there are other people that want to talk. So
great. Thank you, Donna. Yudong, and then Alpita, and then we'll probably need to wrap up and say goodbye.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. First of all, I just want to say, Amanda, you're so courageous. You have a lot of courage in sharing your stories and just pointing out the fact that spirituality is what we need. And especially, for a lot of law students who are literally transitioning from, this state of unknowing what law is to, actually practicing law. And suppose they don't know anything about spiritual aspect, they don't understand why it's important. They're just going to be indoctrinated into corporate lawyers, whatever lawyers, becoming this walking zombie eventually, just know a lot of technicalities and basically just practicing for the system, They don't know what's going on. They just get paid, and that's about it. That's why I think it's so important that you pointed out. And we're actually running a podcast called The Voice to Race through PISLAP Youth, which is like a committee of PISLAP. And it would be great if you could talk about it, like your advice, your thoughts and reflections on how law students currently, not only in South Africa, the program that you are running right now, but also throughout the world, really, law students, what is their struggle, What have they experienced during law school that caused so much difference after they graduate, after they get their lawyer's license? Some people went into corporate law, become these ruthless, hyper-competitive lawyers, completely dehumanizing their clients on one hand, the other one, their colleagues, competitors probably, and other people who are taking the PISLAP, the more spiritually informed approach, because that's really a dramatic shift. People came into law school, they don't have much difference, but after they're done with that 3 years or maybe more years, depending on where you are, such dramatic consciousness shift just took place. And that's amazing. And we need to explore that. So I invite you to our podcast.
Unlearn.
Thank you.
Unlearn, let go.
Thank you. And Alpita, would you close us out here? And then I'll say a word or two before we break.
Okay, well, thank you, Amanda. It's a pleasure to meet you and great to be with this community. My question is really, so I'm 25 years out, But I had a really blessed law school experience. I was at Yale, and we had all these sort of law and philosophy and really, integrative, interdisciplinary classes. And then so it's great to teach that to the law students. And I think, there is another way to think about the law. But then when you're out there, so I've been out for a while and it's to find practicing lawyers and systems, because you can talk about it in an individual level. In my practice, I'm doing this, I'm a meditation teacher, so I understand all the sort of consciousness raising. But what about it? Are there like tribunals or other alternative systems that people can go for conflict resolution, right? And creating almost like, I mean, a separate venue for people, because I think it's sort of sporadic, right? Like, and it's in divorce law, collaborative law, it's in restorative justice in the criminal field, but something where you can say, wow, this is a different way to practice. We train our lawyers this way, and you can enter that. I'm just curious if you
the integrative law court is something Kim and I have discussed. Kim Wright, who, the author of Lawyers as Change Makers. And I think we should schedule a conversation about that, about all of us talking about how do we make that happen? Because it needs energy and resources to make it happen, but it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wonderful note to end on. And thank you, Amanda. I think that is a conversation we've been having in PISLAP, and it sounds like one we should be having again soon. So just want to, I know that we could have gone on a lot longer, but thank you so much, Amanda. That was just wonderful. And I think it obviously engendered a lot of feeling, a lot of reaction, and a lot of thought that we could continue with. So speaking of which, next month, we actually have an open PISLAP call. It's like a community call where we can share more, and it would be a good context for continuing some of this conversation. It's on May 12th at the same time at 1 p.m. East Coast time. So perhaps some or all of you can rejoin then, and we can certainly pick up some of the threads as we speak with each other.
That'd be great.
Great. So thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.
Nanette, before you hang up, would you advertise the June and July calls also?
Oh, sure. Don't have the dates on top of my head, but in June, we have June, I believe it's the second Wednesday in June. I just don't have it right in front of me. We have Dave Nata, a artist, lawyer, activist, creative person who's joined our calls, cartoonist from London, joining us for the talk that month. And then we're planning a July call as well with Farshnarden. And we'll keep you posted on other calls. And just as a heads up, we're also planning a mini conference at the end of September, which we'll get back to you about. That'll also be online. So thanks again to everyone. Thanks for extending your time, for being here. Welcome to those who have come back after an absence, and be well all. Talk soon.
Bye. Thank you, Amanda.
Bye.
Great.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Love you.
Love you, Stu. Oh, some people are still putting stuff in the chat, so I'll have a look.
Oh, okay. Oh, let me get that. Maureen King.
Nice going, Amanda.
Thank you, Stu. And I'm glad that you were here, because I wanted to mention how you in my talk. So it was very awesome that you were here. We'll talk again.
Yes, for sure. Anytime.
Mm-hmm.